Morning, people. Just in the car, just dropped my wife at work and was listening to a radio phone-in on which David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, came on and was talking about the government's latest efforts to smash the people smuggling gangs and stop the trade of illegal migrants crossing the channel into the UK. And I don't know if it's just me, but I just think they've got this completely arse about face, and let me explain why. So what he was talking extensively about was to try and target these gangs and try and target the companies that are providing them with the boats, with the engines, with the infrastructure to actually smuggle the people. They were going to try and clamp down, find out where these boats were coming from, find out where the engines are coming from, find out where the money trail is, confiscate assets, etc., etc. Now, there's nothing really wrong with that. That makes sense, but it won't work. It will make a little bit of a dent, but it's not going to stop anything. And the reason I say that is that you're treating the symptoms, not the cause. The cause of this trade is that millions of people want to come to the UK. Now, we're not getting millions of them, we're getting tens of thousands of them. But in reality, millions of people would like to be in the UK. And tens of thousands of them feel that they can make it by crossing the channel. That's the cause. And then one of the symptoms is that then you get gangs that facilitate that and enable them to come across, whether that's in lorries, whether that's in boats, whatever the mechanism is. You need to tackle the cause, not the symptoms. And I'll give you an analogy. The drugs trade has been rife globally now for decades and decades and decades. There's been a war on drugs for decades and decades and decades. Has it made any real difference? No, it hasn't. You nick gangs all the time. People get banged up all the time, whether that's cocaine smuggling, whether it's smuggling a bit of puff, whether it's ecstasy, whether it's synthetic drugs, whatever it might be. People get nicked for it all the time, but it doesn't stop it happening. Another gang will just pop up in their place. When there's millions and millions and millions of pounds involved, people will find a way to do things. The gangs over in Mexico started building submarines, their own submarines, to smuggle drugs. They had all sorts of aeroplanes and flights. They had very complicated ways of chartering yachts. And no matter how much the USA, who spent billions, literally billions and billions, and had thousands of men, the Drug Enforcement Agency had one of the biggest budgets in the USA. They were like a mini army. They didn't stop it. They haven't stopped it. Because as soon as you take one lot down, another lot will pop up in their place. That is the nature of crime when there's millions and millions and millions of pounds involved. So by attacking the companies that supply boats, by attacking the companies that supply the engines for the boats, you might take this one down, but another one will appear in its place. Or the criminals behind it will set up a network of companies to hide where the actual reality of this is coming from. Or if needs be, they'll build their own factory and make their own boats and their own engines. So yes, by all means go after them in that way, but that ain't going to stop the problem. The way you stop the problem is you stop people wanting to come here. And there's two ways of going about doing that. Firstly, you give them a legal route to apply for asylum, because it's very, very difficult for them to do that now. So you give people the legal ways to apply for asylum, but you then make the rules for granting asylum miles, miles, miles tougher than they are now. From my understanding, something like 75%, it could be a bit higher, a bit lower, but roughly 75% of people that apply for asylum in the UK are granted asylum. 75%? In Germany and in France, it's more like 25 to 30%. So why are we granting 40% more asylum claims than the rest of Europe? That's wrong for a start. So give people the legal means to apply for asylum, but apply the rules much, much, much more firmly. That will cut down on numbers. But then, equally, when people come across, whether it be legally or illegally, you need to make it much less attractive for them. My rules personally would be, until you've lived in this country, worked in this country, and paid a full 5 years, 60 months of full national insurance and full income tax, you do not get a bean of benefits. Not a bean. No housing, no schooling, no income support, nothing. No healthcare. You get emergency healthcare if you get run over or have a heart attack, but other than that, you need to have an insurance policy. That will clamp down on it massively. You also clamp down on cultural practices that draw people here. So I'm firmly against halal slaughter. I think it's a cruel and wicked way of killing animals. So you ban halal slaughter in the UK. If you're going to ban halal slaughter, you also need to ban other similar practices. So you have to ban kosher slaughter. Sorry if that upsets people, but it's true. This is Britain. This is the way we do things. These are the food standards we have. If you don't like that, tough. You completely ban things like female genital mutilation, but you clamp down much, much more toughly on it. And anyone caught doing it, if they have dual nationality, it's immediate deportation. It's not, oh, well, human rights. Sorry, tough, you're gone. Similarly, foreign prisoners, when they finish their sentence, deported. Forget the European Court of Human Rights. If you're a foreign citizen in this country and you commit a serious crime, any sort of violent crime, any sort of assault, any sort of sexual crime, once you finish your sentence, you're gone. And if that screws your family up, tough shit. It's very simple. You make it a environment where people don't want to be unless they comply. So you take away the draw factors, you take away the pull factors, you make it very, very difficult for people to come here and exist here unless they comply with our practices and our laws. Zero benefits, zero acceptance of any form of crime, zero acceptance of cultural practices that don't fit in with the UK. You just make it impossible. Ban marriage to first cousins, sadly, because that is a big draw factor. Ban polygamy and recognition of multiple wives. Ban cultural courts, whether that's Jewish courts or Sharia courts or whatever it might be. You make it impossible for people to live their lives the way they would have lived them in those countries. And then if they still want to come here, if they want to get a good job, if they want to pay taxes, if they want to comply with our practices and our traditions, fine, you're welcome. But if you don't want to do all of those things, get lost. Not interested, do not want you here, couldn't care less what your excuses are, you ain't coming. If we then do that, the numbers will dwindle because they will think, oh, it's not a soft touch in the UK anymore. We're not going to get benefits. We're not going to get housing. We're not going to get on the social housing list. It's not going to be easy for us to get places in schools. We can't get medical treatment unless we pay for an insurance policy. Oh, we can't get the food that we want. All of those things, put those things in place, it will work much, much, much more effectively than trying to target the gangs. Because if you target the gangs and you take a gang down, another one will pop up in its place. If you target the gang's bank accounts, they'll open more accounts. If you shut down the companies that make the boats and the engines, they'll either open new companies themselves or they'll just go to a source in China or Turkey or wherever it might be. That will have an effect, but it's only going to have a minor effect. You need to stop people wanting to come, and you need to make it impossible for people once they get here. That's the way to stop it. That's the only way to stop it. So David Lammy, Keir Starmer, Yvette Cooper, the Border Force, you're going about this totally arse about face.